I'm your commander of common sense, and you're in the right place at the right time. But a lot of fake news going on out there. The Washington Post story today on Jared Kushner is an opinion piece. If you read it, it has all opinion, all conjecture, all subjective thought, no evidence, no reporting. It is nothing but a piece of opinion that belongs on its editorial page, yet it's above the fold on Jared Kushner getting his security clearance downgraded as a story of news, that somehow he's leveraged. Every country that meets with anybody seeks leverage over everybody, whether it's a congressman, a senator, or Joe Blow. That's what countries do. And so to say that somehow he's been leveraged because he's met with foreign dignitaries, he's an advisor to the president, he's his son-in-law, the president likes him, good for him, and he gives good advice and bad advice, I guess. His advice in Alabama, horrible. His advice on Comey, worse. But he's also given the president good advice. So this is the president's decision who might advise him or not. And if he wants Jared in the White House, who is, by the way, not paid, it's not on a taxpayer dime, and Kelly wants to downgrade him, then he'll get whatever the downgraded access is. If he had no information and he wanted to have an office in the White House and advise the president on various issues, he has that right because everybody in there serves at the pleasure of the president in the White House. You serve for him or her, or you get or you shouldn't be there. So this is all too about nothing, and it has nothing to do with anything, and it is just ridiculous that the Washington Post has nothing better to do but to write opinion pieces on Jared Kushner's ability to serve or not serve the president, and about the fact that he's in debt and might be leveraged. I mean, how many people do you think have served in various capacities that have debt from former businesses? So what's that got to do with anything? I mean, the guy's family is worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't think there's a financial issue here. But even if there is, who cares? President wants to be an advisor, you be an advisor. Move on. Nothing to see here, folks. But what aggravated me today is this piece in the Post masquerading as a news. I mean, if I was look, I'm a former editor. If I got that piece, I just said, okay, this is an op-ed for Sunday. What the hell is this? This isn't a story. I mean, you want a story? I need facts. No facts here. John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth. Joining us now, Congressman, Republican, 9th District, Virginia, Morgan Griffith. Congressman, good to have you.
Good to be with you.
Let's get to this whole White House mess. I mean, we got wife beaters in there without clearance. Now we got Jared Kushner. He's not getting clearance. You know, the president, Morgan, could have just said, excuse me, I want to give him whatever clearance he needs, and he could have made the decision. He didn't. He left it up to General Kelly, who said, I got the info back from the FBI, and we're going to downgrade him. Who cares? That's my question. Does it matter?
I think it's a good question. I think that it's important for the president to know if there's an issue, and for Kelly to know if there's an issue. As you pointed out, there may be some financial issue, but as you also pointed out, the family has significant money to handle whatever. But it's important that they know that, hey, he's got some debt out there, so, if he owes the Sultan of Brunei, then maybe we don't take his advice on the Sultan of Brunei issues.
Right.
It's just not – it's something the president ought to know, but it's really not a big deal.
It isn't, and he's not paid, and the president can take advice from whoever he wants. I'm sure he goes upstairs to his quarters and he picks up the phone and calls various different people, and so that's what he does. And that he's the president, and he takes opinions from different people. That's what he chooses to do. Let's get to Congress here, Congressman, and legislation floating around, nothing solid. You might have a compromise on this reaction to Florida as far as a gun bill legislation. Looks like the House is going to act on something. What have you heard?
Well, I haven't heard a lot. There's all kinds of thoughts floating around out there, some of which, may be constitutional and some of which may not be. And I'll just have to take a look at whatever, we're brought and make a decision on how I vote. We have to do some things, but it's not just about guns. Mm-hmm. It is about violent tendencies in our society, the fact that we're failing to pick up on the cues. And when we do get the cues, when calls are made, mm-hmm. there's not apparently on enough occasions, there's not folks who are going out and taking those threats seriously. Now, that doesn't mean that it always happens, but there have been enough of those cases where the warning signs were out there, where people knew there was a problem, and because we didn't want to, put a stigma on somebody or do something that might appear that we're not being fair, we've let things go on as a society, and we've got to stop that as well. So there's a lot of things we can look at. I want to make sure that we're following the Constitution, and as long as we do that, I'm more than happy to take a look at all kinds of things.
What do you think of the Trump campaign announcing a campaign manager? I mean, they're 3 years out. This is unprecedented, right? 1 year in, and they've already started the re-election campaign. I think he's got an eye on the midterms. That's what I've heard. I've not talked to him directly about this, but I think their view was, look, we're going to be running for re-election anyway. Why not start now? We have an office. We're in Trump Tower. We have a re-elect committee. We've raised money. Why not get the thing organized now? It's a little early, right? Unprecedented, but they're behind in a lot of areas, and I think they're trying to find a way to get their message out in the most robust manner possible. When you saw this, what was your first reaction, Congressman Griffith?
Interestingly, my first reaction was, well, the president is telling the American people exactly what's going on again, because, he has a tendency, even when it's not the political thing to do, to speak his mind. And look, if you don't think that Barack Obama already had a pretty good idea who his campaign manager was going to be after the first year in office, think again. I mean, they may not have made a final decision, but they had people out there. The Obama organization never stopped organizing, never stopped working, and continues on to this day. So I don't really think it's unusual. I just think it's honest.
Everybody's done this, but they've hidden it, and the president just put it out there.
That's my belief, yes, sir.
Now, the president had a phone call, as you know, I think over the weekend, with the Mexican president who was scheduled to come to the White House middle March, end of March, first week in April. That's been scrapped. Apparently the conversation didn't go well. And the president's saying, look, I'm going to build this wall, period. The Mexican president not liking it. Now they have a fight on the phone. They don't come. Just normal jockeying between world leaders, Congressman Griffith, or do you see something else there?
Well, I think it's unusual in the sense that most American leaders have, in the past few decades have been afraid to have somebody cancel a meeting. Welcome to negotiating. Sometimes as a part of negotiating, American presidents may not have done it, but most others have. When you're negotiating, you have to be willing to at least walk away from the table for a little while. And I hope that we'll be able to, reopen that line of communication and the talks will continue. But the fact that the Mexican president canceled a meeting is not really a big deal. It means the president for the rights of the United States.
I kind of think you're right about that. I mean, everybody in the past would be so afraid that somebody canceled the meeting, and the president's just basically like, you don't want to come, screw you. Don't come. You're going to have to come on my terms, because it is an honor to come to the United States, go to the White House, meet with the president, right? Foreign leaders want to do that. They jockey to do that. And so the president says, look, you know what? We're not seeing eye to eye. You're just going to have to wait. So the meeting gets canceled, and it is what it is. Democrats putting out their own memo took 10 pages. I went through it. Tell me what I missed here. I went through it, and a lot of it's redacted. So, you got broken sentences, but what was this exercise about, and what was your reaction to it? The Democratic memo, sir.
Yeah. Well, here's the bottom line. The Democrats took more pages to try to, obfuscate and hide the fact that the Justice Department signed off on some documents that went to a court. The rogue agents, the FBI is a great organization, but rogue agents inside of that operation didn't tell the whole truth to the court. They tried to hide from the court the political nature of the Trump dossier, and were successful. They led with that in their request for the subpoena. They made that a big deal. That wasn't something we made a big deal. That was something that the FBI and the folks made a big deal to the court. You don't lead with your weakest argument. The Democrats had to spend 10 pages trying to explain 4 pages because the truth of the matter is that there was at least an attempt to hide information from the court, and I would think that was I think that's a big deal. The Democrats found one little footnote in their entire document that was sent to the court that said something like, "Yeah, there might be a political matter here." And theoretically, if that had just been on one occasion, but this subpoena was renewed 4 times. If you said, well, that was on the first one and they weren't 100% sure, maybe. I still think it was improper, but maybe you could make an argument. But after it was confirmed that it was a document being paid for by the Democrat organizations in a presidential election, that information should have been made front and center, mm-hmm. and they should have been forthright with the judge and said, Your Honor, here's the info, here's what we've got. We still want the warrant. And then the judge would be the one to make the decision. Instead, they took that information away from the judge for all practical purposes.
It's really unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's more than unbelievable. It's scary.
It is scary.
Here's the problem. As a former criminal defense attorney, I can tell you that it doesn't matter whether you're on the left or on the right. What we want in this country is we want our law enforcement agencies being honest with the court, putting on the evidence. You don't need to lie to get the information you need if it's something serious. You don't need to hide the truth. They're supposed to be the people telling the judge the whole thing. And because this is a court that's held in secret, the standards should be even higher. Mm-hmm. And we had people in both the FBI and the Justice Department who some didn't tell the whole truth. Others didn't check. And the whole reason the law was written that way is that you had to have high-ranking people signing off on it, was not so they would be a rubber stamp, but so that nothing would be presented to the court that was even questionable. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it was questionable from the get-go, and they didn't do their job.
And Congressman Griffith, you would anticipate that the FISA court judge presiding, when reviewing the evidence presented to him or her, had the same opinion that you have, that obviously, if this is presented to me, this has been vetted for accuracy at the highest levels. That's why I see a signature here from Rod Rothenstein, or I see a signature from another high-ranking official, whether it be Comey or someone else. I see signatures of high-ranking government officials. That judge has to assume they did their homework. They have to assume that what he's being presented in the request for surveillance is accurate, right?
That is correct. And what it should have said was, here's this dossier. We think it's significant, but Your Honor, you need to be aware that the base information was paid for by political organizations connected with the Hillary Clinton campaign. You have one sentence in there like that, then the question is, what was the judge thinking? But as it was, the judge was not given the whole truth. And the judge is supposed to get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Instead, he got a bunch of rumors that were being packaged as the truth. They tried to, at least in the beginning, claim that, he had this Yahoo report. It's all the same stuff. It's circular reasoning. And the judge was not given the whole truth. The judge could not have made an informed decision, in my opinion. And maybe the judge would have granted the subpoena even with that information, but he or she was denied the opportunity to ever make that decision. I think it's an affront to the court, and I think it calls into question the judgment of those people who signed off on it. I think they were just being negligent. But when you're talking about an invasion of privacy of an American citizen, you better have good information.
Congressman Griffith, so what you're really saying here as a former defense attorney is negligent at best, complicit at worst.
Well, it was negligent at the higher levels. There were rogue folks who knew what they were doing, and they were doing bad things. Mm-hmm. They were improper. Then you have negligence or complicity. That is correct. And the problem is, it's not about Trump. It's not about the individual they were trying to get the warrant on. It's about whether or not the American judicial system is going to be fair to all those who come within the purview of it, whether it be a warrant or an indictment or whatever. are we being fair? And there are lots of times in history we have not been, but it is our goal and our efforts to strive to be fair, and this was not a fair situation from the very get-go, and it affects every citizen of the United States, because if they can do it to them, they can do it to us.
That's really the bottom line. Jeff Sessions, Attorney General, my narrative is, look, I love Jeff Sessions when he was in the Senate because he was an ally of mine fighting immigration. We were on the same side for a long time. He's been on my show 50 times. But as Attorney General, I don't know. I'm just not enamored by the whole thing. But yesterday he comes out and says, well, maybe we're going to look at, what happened here. Maybe we're going to investigate it. But he hasn't done crap. Can't somebody in the House judiciary system or Bob Goodler or somebody go to the Attorney General and say, look, we want action on this. We want an investigation, because he's not doing anything.
I am sure. I don't have any special information, but I feel fairly comfortable those types of conversations are going on. And I can tell you that, even if it's just a matter of negligence, if I were one of the folks that had signed off on that and had something that I think affects the entire system, I would immediately tender my resignation if requested.
So you think the conversations are going on, and that perhaps this Attorney General, who has done nothing so far, actually will do something. I mean, he recused himself from the Russia investigation, but this be part of that? Would he have to turn this decision over to Augustine as a lawyer yourself, or is this separate and different from that? Because this isn't really about the Russia investigation. This is about what you presented to a judge.
Yeah, this is more of a, and I don't want to say it was that his deputy was unethical, because I think he was negligent. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt and assuming he was just merely negligent.
You have a big heart.
What the law requires him to do, but you can't very well have your deputy investigate himself. So he's either got to decide that it's because it's not a Russian issue, it's a issue which at least implicates ethics, or has an appearance of improprieties, we would say at the law. He either has to take charge, or he has to figure out who's going to take charge and do the investigation and find out why it was that they didn't tell the whole truth to the FISA court judge. And then, whatever happens, happens.
I mean, you nailed it, right? That's why we love having you on every week, because you give us such a clear and concise view of what should be done and great insight. And we thank you for being there. We're out of time. I want to thank Congressman, Republican, 9th District, Virginia, Morgan Griffith, for once again shedding light where there is the proverbial darkness. Thank you, Congressman, for being with us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Go to griffith.house.gov.